Welcome to the Heartline, where we do hard, honest work of telling the truth, healing from within, and rewriting our story out loud and in real time. I am your host, Adelai Addie Brown, and I want to thank you for joining me for this powerful series honoring Mother's Day, Mental Health Awareness Month, Lupus Awareness Month, my mommy herself, the one and only Susan Beach, and the complicated truth about our relationships with our mothers. This episode is about beginning again with truth. So let me be clear with you right now. This is not about shaming your past or your mother, you or your mother. This is about reclaiming your past and being able to reframe and restructure it in a way that works for you, your mom, and everyone impacted by your relationship. So, whether your relationship with your mother is beautiful, broken, or both, this space is for you. You can connect with me anytime on social media at Heart Coach Talk or through my link tree at The Heart Connections, where you will find my books, audio trainings, and tools to help you get started doing hard work at your own pace. Because let's be honest, hard work can be challenging. Working on yourself is the most rewarding yet most challenging thing you're ever going to do in your life. So I just want to encourage you to get connected with me. And if you're ready for coaching, you want to have more healing spaces, or want me to speak to you or your group or your organization, send an email to info at addiebb.com. My team and I would love to connect with you. Because remember this, when you heal your heart, you transform your life and you change the world for better for us all. So today, because this is our special Mother's Day episode, and shout out to all of the mothers, those that are mothering, no matter how you find yourself in the position of being a mother, I just want to honor you. I just want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for your sacrifice. I want to thank you for your presence. I want to thank you for your being. Right? I want to thank you for taking on such an important role of being able to impact the world and humanity the way you do. So when we think about mothers and children and we think about Mother's Day, I know a lot of times Mother's Day has been so commercialized that you see a lot of commercials and there's a lot of advertisements, a lot of flowers, a lot of cards for us to honor our mothers. And though that can be nice and we always want to honor mothers, I have found in my own relationship with my mother that the best way we can honor our mothers is by being truthful with them. And in my personal relationship with my mother, I really struggled with being able to honestly tell her how I feel because that was not necessarily something that was embraced or welcomed in our family and our relationship dynamic, and not necessarily even in our family dynamic. I came from a family where we are very expressive, we are very loving, but when it's time to talk about difficult and challenging things, there are many times when that does not get done, that doesn't get addressed, because telling the truth is often seen as being rude or being disrespectful, right? So when we go through this month, right, I'm calling this series Heart Work, a love letter to mothers, because I believe behind every complicated mother and child relationship is a story that needs to be told, a heart that needs to be healed, and a relationship with potential for restoration. Right. And I want us to really be focused on that. I want you to understand that wherever you and your mother are right now, it's okay. One of the things that I hear is a term that I hear a lot when you hear people talk about a mother wound, right? It shows up a lot in adults in their adult life because when people are younger, many times we attribute adverse behavior in children and young adults to, well, that's just because they're young. That's just because they're immature. But many times we don't really sit down and think about what is really impacting this child and impacting this child's behavior, right? And one of the things that I want to be clear about is I understand that this topic is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. When we start talking about mothers, I notice that many individuals have a propensity to automatically go on the defense about their moms. So when we start talking about, you know, looking at, when as a coach, I'll use this personally. When I'm working with an individual that's having a challenge personally with self-esteem or confidence or clarity or being able to deal with some type of pain or numbness, what I often find is there is some type of mother wound that is there. And I'm going to define a mother wound, or at least give you some information around it so you could go do more research on it yourself. But it's just a term that's used to describe a deep um, foundational weakness in the identity of an individual when they don't get certain things that they need from their mothers, or they get they either don't get it, or now I'll get into it. They either don't get it, or there's a lack or a deficit on the things that they do need. And a lot of times, especially for individuals whose mothers were there, were present, and they showed up, and but they still didn't get the connection and affection that they needed from their mothers. You find these mother wounds, and they show up in our relationships. They show up in how we're able to interact with individuals in our workplaces and our businesses. And um what I want us to do as we get into this topic is, I want to take a pause, and I'm glad that I did that. I want to take a pause because for the next 4 weeks, I plan to talk about the dynamics with mothers and their children. I'm going to reflect a lot on my relationship with my mother and just the experiences that I've had with others when dealing with their moms. And the reason why I think that this is so important is because we live in a world where, and I'll say we live in a world, and I will acknowledge that I'm saying this very limitedly because I'm talking about living in a world, but I've lived in America. I've never lived out of America. I've never lived out of the Southeast America. So I understand that a lot of my understanding of culture when it comes to mothers could be limited. However, I have studied, I have read, and what I have really found is that many adults are really struggling with being able to address the challenges, the deficits that they're facing in their relationships with their mother. And this is for men and women. And I think it's even harder for men because of the dynamic that many of them have with their mothers, and just societally, especially where I'm from and this in the culture I'm in, it's almost like a taboo thing to talk about how your mother may have hurt you, or how you may not be fulfilled or comfortable in the relationship that you currently have with your mother, or there may be situations from the past that you have with your mother that have really bothered you, that have really challenged you, and you at this adult age are now really realizing that those things from the past are showing up a lot in your present, and it's causing a lot of problems. So wherever you find yourself, and you and your mother may be in a good space, but you may be around someone, you may have a friend, maybe your spouse or your partner has a challenging relationship with their parent, and you just don't understand. So I just invite you on this series with us, because before my mother passed away, and that's why I said this series has a lot of meaning to me. May is a very important month to me. But before my mother passed, we talked extensively about the need for more parents and children to have the deep heart searching, heart healing conversations, honest conversations, and without being judged, without feeling like you're going to lose the love as a result of that, right? So I just really want to jump into that. So when we think about what a mother wound is, right? A mother wound a lot of times shows up in people's lives when you are a people pleaser, when you are emotionally distant, when you have an issue with perfectionism, maybe you have an issue with anger, unresolved anger, or you don't know how to necessarily manage your anger. So the best way, and I'm getting this information from Psychology Today, and the best way to think of a mother wound is a loss or a lack of mothering. This is a typical deficit in a mother daughter or mother son relationship that is passed down through generations. And it is often a reflection on how we have experienced parenting and how we parent. Right? When we talk about a mother wound, it says children who are raised by alcoholics, drug addicted mothers, or mothers who have had mental health conditions, either undiagnosed or untreated, may struggle into their own adulthood. This is not a specific diagnosis, but it is a way of looking at how current codependencies behaviors may be linked to missing elements from your past, right? So you're, like I mentioned earlier, you may be having these challenges and struggles in your current relationship and in your current when we talk in your current circumstances, but I want you to realize that many of these things may come from the fact that you have a mother wound that you don't realize. It's like having a wound on your body that you didn't realize was hurt or infected until you touch it and it hurts really bad. So we talk about, let's see here. So let's keep going. I want to keep getting into this. It says, however, there are also, and I feel like we're talking about everyone. I experienced dealing with a parent that struggled with addiction to drugs and alcohol, that dealt with mental health challenges and things of that sort. However, we're also talking about children who were raised with mothers who do not have these challenges. And I found a lot of times when people have mothers who were present, showed up every day, might have been at home moms, may have worked, but they were there. They came to the games, they showed up, right? These are mothers who may provide for the physical needs of children and even interact with children in a positive way, but simply do not provide the deep love and attention that all children require. They may not have been abusive or neglectful. They may never have engaged in any negativity in their relationship with their children, but they were always distant emotionally and less tuned into the emotional needs of their children. So I have interacted with women who I have found to be very, I describe it as being very nurturing but not affectionate, right? So when I read this, I was like, that's exactly what I mean when I say someone being very nurturing but not affectionate. So you provide the physical needs, you interact with me positively, but there's still a disconnect in emotionally of our connection. And one thing you're going to learn about me, the more we talk, the more we grow heart equity together, you're going to understand that I'm going to keep reminding you that the heart of a matter is always important. And it's not what you do, but why you do it. It's not what you do, but how you do it. And it's really important for us to understand mothers, those that have mothers, maybe your mother has passed on like my mother has. There is still healing and work that can be done around that. Every day I am as much as I grieve my mother, I am grateful for her, right? But I also realized, and me and her worked through this extensively, especially for the last 5 years of her life. We really worked on the mother wounds that she experienced from my amazing grandmother and mother wounds that I experienced from her. So when you hear me talk about this, I know sometimes you might cringe. You might think, well, who is she? How, like, her mother did the best she could. I'm sure her mother made sacrifices for her. I'm not taking that away. Both things could be true. Your mother may have sacrificed to make sure you had a good life, but there were still things that you needed from her. There was love, there was connection, there was affection, there was reassurance, there was a soft and gentleness that you needed from her that you did not get. And as an adult, it is playing up a big part in your current movie of your life. So let's talk about some signs of a mother wound. I want to read through this and then I'm going to get through some things in my own personal life. And then we're going to talk about some things that you can do to help nurture your relationship with your mother as well as nurture yourself, mother yourself, right? Even this is for men as well. Because None of us are all one thing. And we're all designed to exist together. And there are so many men that are struggling with challenges in their relationship with their mother, and they're really wrestling with feeling like they're being disrespectful, but just because they're telling the truth about the pain or the lack or the neglect that they receive from their mothers and or experience in their relationships with their mothers, and not knowing how to express that in a way where they don't feel guilty or feel like they're accusing them. And I just want to let you know that the truth hurts, but it sets us free. So, whether whatever side you are on of hearing this message, just understand whether you're a mother or a child, just understand that if something I'm saying to you triggers you, then ouch and amen. Then thank God for the clarity and the revelation. And I encourage you to go deeper, to work through that challenge so that you can find yourself in a beautiful, bountiful place, that you can find yourself understanding that you're not broken, you've never been broken, you're just a whole being, and you just don't know certain parts of yourself because of the experiences you've had in your life or the lack thereof. And heart equity is all about you cultivating the equity that is within you and everything that is around you, the ecosystem, the solar system of your life, personally, relationally, financially, where your purpose creates a profit for you. But many times we can't get to that because the foundational areas of our lives are in a deficit. And for many of us, this is a mother wound, and we got to deal with it. We can no longer act like this is not happening. So let's look at some signs that you might be dealing with a mother wound. And like I said, I'm using this information from Psychology Today. I'm also going to give you some of my own personal things, but I want to use resources and tools that you yourself can use, because I want to encourage you to start researching and learning about these things yourself. Right? Get you a therapist, get you a life coach, get in a support group, get yourself going so that you can be the best version of yourself. So, one of the things we look for, adults dealing with a mother wound often look back at their childhood and can identify these issues. They never felt like they had their mother's approval or acceptance. I'm not saying that you don't now realize your mother did love you and approve you, but she just had a funny way of showing it. No, we're just talking about growing up. These are feelings and experiences that you had. You never really felt like you had your mother's approval. Another thing was, these children identify feeling concerns about not being loved by their mother or not being loved as much as other siblings or family members. So when you were growing up, maybe you just felt like your mother didn't love you. Or maybe you felt like you weren't loved as much as those around you. Even though you may have the understanding now and know what was going on to explain it, that's not what we're talking about. I'm just saying, when you hear these things, they resonate with you, right? Another thing, difficulties in relating to a mother, to the mother, on an emotional level. So when you were young, you felt like you and your mother never saw eye to eye emotionally. Maybe your mother always told you you were too sensitive, or you were too dramatic, or you always got something going on, or maybe she just did not acknowledge what was going on with you, with your feelings, your emotions as a child, and that was an issue for you. There was uncertainty about the relationship with your mother, if it could be lost due to a mistake or accident, and or just telling the truth. For me, that was a big one. I felt like, and not just with my mother, other individuals that I love in my family, that were really close to me. I felt a lot of uncertainty in the relationship I had with my mother and with others. And I felt like their love would be lost or taken away from me if I made a mistake, if I made too much of a bad accident, if I told the truth about how I really felt and they didn't like it. I felt like love would be lost. And I vividly remember that. And I also write about it in my book. What I love about and I just want to take this moment to encourage you, if you haven't already, to get your copy of Help Save Me from My Broken Heart: Your Journey to Living and Loving Again. I have it in paperback. I also have it in audio. I know a lot of people like the audio book. I recorded it myself. and you can get a copy of that at my link tree. Go to Linktree / the Heart Connections. And in the book, I talk about these things. And this was even before I really was like, I wrote this book 7, almost 8 years ago, right? So I wrote Help Save Me from My Broken Heart, Your Journey to Living and Loving Again almost 8 years ago. But as I read through this, I talked about having these feelings and experiencing a lot of these emotions when I was dealing with my relationship with my mother. And I could identify that that caused big problems with my relationship with her, but it also caused even bigger problems with my romantic relationships and my friendships and the relationships with other people and other family members that I love and was dearly close with, and even in professional spaces. But even more importantly, my own parenting and how I was showing up as a mother. So as I go through these steps, I really and just highlight these things, and we have this conversation. I really want you to hear me. Don't hear me looking to just discredit what I'm saying. And you may not agree with everything that I'm saying. Maybe your mother, you never went through these things. But I can promise you, if you're listening to this, you're interacting with someone that has experienced a mother wound, is dealing with a mother wound, and it will benefit you to understand them better, what they're going through. Because when we grow heart equity, personal, relational, and financial wealth that we grow through heart authentic living, it's all about understanding being good as a whole being, but understanding how that plays out in the world around you. It starts with your personal wealth and builds into your relational wealth, and then it goes into your purposeful wealth, your financial wealth. But we all came here some way, shape, or form through a mother. And we're wired for certain types of love and care from a mother, just being a human being with just the innate needs that we have. And I know when I talk to a lot of people, it's a lot of deflecting. Oh, but I know, yeah, my mama was something else and she was a handful, or my mother was very hard on us, but I know why she did it, because she wanted us to be able to make it in the world. And look at me now, I'm doing good. Are you really? Are you? Like, are you doing good on paper? Do you have a good career and all of those things? But are you really enjoying that life that you've built as a result of being this overachiever that did not get the emotional nurturing and connection you needed as a child, and it was important, and you tried to convince yourself it wasn't? Let's keep it going. A couple other things. You're always trying to do better or to be perfect, to attempt to gain your mother's attention or acceptance. And for me, it wasn't just my mother, but I was always trying to do better or perfect it. And if I didn't feel like it was perfect, then it was like a failure. And then I would sabotage myself. I still work through that to this day. And it was all to gain my mother's attention and acceptance. And like I said, it wasn't just my mother. For some of you, we'll talk about fathers when we get to fathers, but right now we're talking about mothers. But there are people who are mother figures in your life who played a mothering role. It could be a teacher, it could be an aunt, it could be a neighbor, it could be a friend, it could be some other family member, but you're always attempted to gain that person's attention and acceptance. And then you have feelings of having to protect yourself, care for yourself, or shelter yourself and your mother rather than her protecting, caring for, and sheltering you. That's a big one. When you have feelings like, especially since you were younger, you feel like you got to protect your mother. You have to care for your mother. You're responsible for sheltering her, her feelings, her finances, whatever it was, rather than her protecting you or sheltering you or just not putting that burden on you. And when we go through these types of feelings as a child, it ends up in low self-esteem, feelings of self-worth, and lack of self-worth, and unworthiness. um a lot of times people who struggle with their relationships with their mothers, you have an inability to connect with others, and you have a deep need for perfection and control. So these are all the signs of what a mother wound is. So I really wanted to kind of explain that to you because I understand that when we throw out these terms, everyone does not always understand that. And I will include the link in the show description for those of you who might want to go back and read that article yourself. So I was thinking about my relationship with my mother and just thinking about today's show and just, the mother when love and pain coexist. And I just remember always having a ride or die type of relationship with my mother. And last week, I think I was talking with my aunt, who's also my godmother, who's also my mother's big sister, who's 3 years ahead of her in age. And they were really close, and especially when they were younger. And my aunt told me a funny story about when she was graduating from college, South Carolina State University, go Bulldogs. She told me a story about how, because I would have been like 5, maybe 6 months old when she graduated, and my aunt was talking about how my whole family was so excited, especially my mother. And if you know my mom and you just know her energy, if you wanted somebody to be excited for you and cheer you on, my mama was the person to call because she would really do that. But I realized she's just always been that type of person. So my mother had me, she was 22 years old. So at this time she would have been 22, maybe about to turn 23, somewhere around that age. So my daughter's age right now. So Aunt Lucy said when she was walking out of the stadium onto the field so that they can go sit down for the graduation to begin, and everybody was cheering on the graduates. She said she could hear my mother say, "Look at Aunt Lucy, Adelaide! Look at Aunt Lucy! Look at Aunt Lucy, Adelaide!" And like cheer. And it's like Aunt Lucy said she was so proud, but it was funny to her. It tickled her because she was thinking, that's a baby. But my mom was talking to me like like I was a big girl, and we were celebrating Aunt Lucy together. And even though I must have been 5 or 6 months old, when Aunt Lucy told me that story, it was almost like I felt that memory. I don't consciously remember it, but it was like I felt that memory, and it got me thinking of our body never forgets. No matter how much bigger we are. At that time, my mama couldn't carry me when she transitioned, but at that time, I'm sure she carried me in that stadium or was holding me at that time, even if she had a stroller, right? But when we think about our mothers and how they have impacted us, it started in the womb when your mother was carrying you. And in an honor to mothers and everything that they go through, my and this being in honor of Lupus Awareness Month, when my mother got pregnant with me, they had just told her she probably would never be able to have children. And they thought that with her having lupus, it really wasn't a good idea for her to be pregnant. She also had people who she loved encouraging her not to have me because it was not an ideal situation for me to be born in. My mother was a young college student, and my father was a middle-aged married man. And here I came. And I say that with with pride and love and thankfulness and gratitude for my mother and my father. I'm thankful I'm here. Many years I was challenged with that, but I'm thankful that I'm here now. But when my mother got pregnant and had lupus, they didn't even know if she was going to be able to carry me. They didn't know what was going to happen. She had just been told, like I said, she was probably never going to have kids. And here we go, a year and 15 months later, she's at the graduation with her baby, bouncing, celebrating her big sister graduating. But when Aunt Lucy told me that, it told me why I get so excited about celebrating people, why I'm excited about people doing well. And I'm thankful for that. But that was ingrained in me through my mother. So just as much as we could talk about mother wounds, understand that I am acknowledging how wonderful and awesome and amazing our mothers are. But just understanding the tension that we hold in our relationships many times with our mothers. My mother having lupus made it very challenging for her. I remember being a little girl and we would go out places, and I often think about this. I love what they call day clean in Gullah language. I love the evening. I love the sunset. I love, after 6 o'clock, after 5 o'clock in the summertime. I love that time of day. And I remember one day I was sitting down thinking about, why do I love that time of day? There could be many reasons, but one of the reasons why I love that time of day is because growing up, my mom would take me out places and do things. I remember going to Charlestown Landing. I remember going to Brittlebank Park and walking around downtown. I remember traveling with mommy, but I remember going out to the baseball games on James Island, the softball games, and going on Mosquito Beach as a kid. But most of the things that we did when I was little, we did in the evening. And we did that because my mother had lupus. And the way the lupus impacted her was they called it the slang for it was vampire blood, right? And it's like she had the butterfly rash on her face, which is very synonymous with people who are challenged with lupus, but she was really challenged with going out in the sun. And a lot of people with lupus don't realize that they have to be really careful going out in the sun because having too much sun exposure for anyone, but especially someone dealing with that, it can really impact their health. And I remember my mother being full of life and moving around. I just remember days when she couldn't get out the bed because of pain from her lupus. And I just remember being a little girl and just feeling like I know I got to help mommy. I know I got to be there for mommy. Like I know that we're supporting each other. And even as I studied a mother wound, right? Even as I studied that and I realized I always felt like I had to protect my mother because my mother had an illness that she had when I was born. My Aunt Lucy was telling me that they were excited when they found out that she was pregnant, but she said one of the things that she told me when mommy died that I thought was so sweet and it stuck with me and I knew it, but she reminded me of it. She said, your mother had been having challenges with lupus. Lupus was really a struggle for her. And she said that when your mother was pregnant with you, her lupus went in the lupus, I don't like to claim it, it went into remission. And it was like she was healthy, she was happy, her skin cleared up. She wasn't having all the aches and pains that she had been experiencing before. So even her getting pregnant, even though it wasn't an ideal situation, God blessed her. God blessed me to come out a healthy baby. I'm so thankful I don't have lupus. I'm just so thankful for what God has done in my life. I remember being tested for that. She was really concerned about that when I was a teenager, even when we were going through some of the toughest times in life. I just remember, even in those younger years, I remember loving my mama and thinking about how pretty she was and how much I admired her. But I also remember feeling like I had to protect her. And even in that, I also remember feeling like I wasn't safe. Like I know I was physically safe with her, but I didn't feel emotionally safe. I didn't feel like I can always tell the truth without a repercussion to my honest, raw feelings. And you may feel that way with your mother. You may have experienced that with your mother, and maybe you don't know how to process that and you don't know what to do with that. And I just want to encourage you to just begin to experience it. When we start to explore healing, when we start to explore restoration, what I want you to understand is that it's a process and it's a journey. I look at the healing process with a mother and a child. It's like climbing a mountain. And even though you're climbing a mountain and you're looking up and you know you want to get to the top, realistically, if anybody's ever been on a mountain or been around a mountain, then you will know that getting up that mountain looks like this and it's twisting and turning and there's all of these things and you going down in creeks and crevices and you feel like you getting ready to fall over the side of the mountain or fall down a cliff, and that's exactly what your heart and soul will feel like when you're recovering your relationship with your mother. My mother had a lot of support from my grandmother and my grandfather when I was born. She was a single mom. Like I said, she was in college. My grandparents stepped in a lot. But even though those grandparents stepped in a lot and I loved them and I adored them, I still longed for a deeper intimacy with my mother. And I remember telling her that. I remember telling her, as much as I love grandma and granddaddy and I love being there, she said, yeah, you used to cry to be there. I said, "But I wanted you there too." I remember being little and wanting mommy there as well as grandma and granddaddy. I wanted my daddy there too. That wasn't what I had. That wasn't the reality at that time. But I remember longing for that as a child. And when little kids don't get what they need, they make up a reason why, because their brains have not developed enough to reason and rationalize. So we, as little children, tell ourselves, well, I'm not good enough, or maybe it's something wrong with me why my mom isn't nurturing me the way I need. And maybe you don't even have the words to say, I'm not being nurtured. You just know it's something you need and you're not getting it. And then you wonder why you got in that romantic relationship and your man or your woman, it's like, I need something. You're just not giving me what I need. You're not, speaking my love language. You're not, meeting my, I need this and you're not meeting my expectations. A lot of times that person can't meet your expectation because that wound has been there since you were born. That deficit in your foundation is so deep. Your spouse or your significant other or your children's success, none of those things are going to fill that void. That's why I realize a lot of people with a mother wound are overachievers. I get it. I am them. I could see why it's hard to think anything is good enough. Because when you're little and you don't get the affection and the nurturing from your mother the way that you need it, regardless of what the circumstance is, your mother could have been challenged with health issues. It could have been all these things. Until you really address that issue, your mom can apologize. My mom apologized. That's when our healing shifted. But even after her apology, I still had to do my work. There's an amazing psychologist, therapist, Dr. Anita Phillips, pastor, and she talks about this. She talks about how so many people want to change their thoughts, but you got to deal with your emotions because your emotions are what create your thoughts. Your thoughts are what create your behavior. Your behaviors are what create your life. And she talked about apologizing to her children for the things that she's done, but also letting them know, I've apologized, but that's not going to heal that wound. That's not going to remove that wound and completely heal it. Now you're going to have to do your own work to get to that point. So I just want to encourage you. And I also have a few um things I want you to think about. And this is how I started to really love on my mother and really be able to coexist with her with the love and the pain, right? Because I'm gonna go a little deeper in the story about my mother and I, how we went from being I'm talking about we went from physical altercations to being best friends. I'm talking about we went from hospitalizing and all the things and blacking each other, blacking eyes, getting black eyes in our altercations to being best friends, right? Your mental and your emotional health impacts your relationship with your mother. Another thing that I realized in doing my research on the idea of lupus awareness was that the prednisone that my mother was taking, I didn't realize how much that impacted her mentally. The side effects of that medicine are out of this world and can cause people to really not be themselves, not be able to be comfortable in their own body, just trying to find relief from the disease of lupus. And so it's just a lot of compounded issues that so many of us are dealing with. And when you start to do hard work, sometimes it can feel exhausting because you're like, "Oh my gosh, I start addressing this issue and I realize all of these other things are contributing to that too." And it's like, "It's okay. You're right. But we're going to get through it." So here's some things I want you to think about as we begin to bring this episode to a close. What are you still trying to get from your mother that she may never be able to give to you? I want you to think about that. What are you still trying to get from your mother that she may be able to never be able to give to you? That changed my life. When I realized that I am responsible for nurturing the little girl in me, As an adult, I can no longer be looking for my mother to mother the little girl in me, but she could be the mother to the adult woman that I am now. She could still love me and show compassion and empathy, but at the end of the day, I am responsible for mothering the little girl in me. So what was I trying to get from my mother? I know for me, I was trying to get payback. There were things that I would do that were manipulative and controlling, that were very overt, very covert, very underlying, very passive aggressive, that would send my mother through the roof. But I would act like, I don't know why she's acting like that. But I knew I was doing that. But that was a way I would try to take my power back, because I felt so disempowered by having to mother my mother. Another thing I want you to think about: if your mother was also surviving and not thriving, what does that change in your narrative? So if you were trying to get something from your mother, or you now realize that your mother was not in a good space when she was parenting you as a little person, or as a younger person, or as a teenager, or whatever that time of life may be for you, maybe your entire life. If you realize that she was just getting through, maybe on the surface she had money, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, she was done. She was down. She was in a deficit. Does that change the narrative you have about yourself and your mother? Does it open the door for you to have a different perspective of your life? Think about it. Here's another one. Are you grieving who your mother was, or who you needed her to be? I know for me, I had to grieve. I had to specifically grieve the fact that my mother was not the mother I wanted her to be. And I created this image of a mother in my life by using my grandmother, my Aunt Tat, my Aunt Mabel, Claire Huxtable on TV, a couple of my other friends' moms. It was like this um smorgasbord of women that, with all these special characteristics, I put together, and I felt like this is what my mother should be doing for me, and I held her to that standard. And I remember doing hard work, working through my 6-step heart equity process of doing the work, right? Our divine heart transplant. I remember coming to a place of awareness and acceptance and forgiveness. That's in the crux of the 6 steps. That's step 2, 3, and 4. And I remember realizing that I need to grieve the mother I thought I wanted. I need to grieve the mother. I need to grieve all of that so that I can be open to receiving who she really is in my life. So are you grieving, or do you need to grieve who your mother is right now, because it's not who you wanted? Do you need to grieve the mother she was to you, or who you needed her to be? Come on, we're going to do some hard work. Now, I want, as you think about that, we're going to transition, and I want you to think about something. If this episode stirred anything in you, that's a good thing. That means that your heart is not numb. Maybe it brought tears. Maybe it made you think about some things. Maybe there were some certain situations that just popped up in your brain as I was talking. I want you to write those things down, because healing starts with the truth. Your body, maybe as I was talking, you felt sensations throughout your body. That's a sign that something I'm saying was relatable. I encourage you to continue to move forward. Healing is scary. The truth can hurt. It sets you free. So let's move forward with courage and confidence and clarity, because you matter and you're worth it. So I have some hard work for you to do this week. There are some journal prompts. I want you to get a journal. If you've been following me, I've been talking about a journal, and I do want to let you know that you will be able to order some journals directly from me that are designed to help you through this process of growing heart equity and doing your own personal heart work. And in the meantime, I want you to, one, understand that these prompts are designed to bring about truth, healing, personal clarity. But this is not to bash your mother or you, okay? But I need you to be honest, because you cannot heal what you would not reveal. You are humanizing your mother beyond her role as a mother, because believe it or not, she's a mother to you, but that's not all she is in existence in this world. That's not all she's called to be. And this space is created for us to have compassion. This creates a space for us to be able to grieve healthily and also have a deeper understanding of our mothers, ourselves, and God in the life that He has for us. Because we're going to be limited in our lives if we can't truly heal in the areas where we're most vulnerable. And it starts with our mommies. So think about this first. I want you to think and journal about, what did I need from my mother that I didn't receive? And how has that shaped who I became or who I've become? So in this, you just exploring your emotional needs that were unmet and how they show up in your adult patterns. I'm really asking you to not judge what comes up for you as you journal. And I'm really asking you to write. Now, you may be completely opposed to writing these responses, and I get that. And you may do an audio journal or you may type it, and that's fine, no judgment. But there are healing tendencies that take place when we sit down and actually write, and I want to encourage you to do that. So that question again, what did I need from my mother that I didn't receive? And how has that shaped who I've become, who I currently am at this moment? Question number 2, who is or who was my mother outside of being my mother? Who is my mother outside of being my mother? Or who was my mother outside of being my mother? Like as a human being, as a woman, who is she? If your mother has passed like me, who was she? They're still living on, but I want you to journal about that. And just to put it out there, give yourself at least 15 to 20 minutes to do these journal prompts. If you need longer, take longer, but set the timer. That way you don't get anxious and you actually sit down and do it. So you give yourself at least 5 minutes to sit down and ponder and reflect on each one of these prompts. Okay. So who is or who was my mother outside of being my mother? And the third prompt that I really, really want you to sit with, write down one unspoken truth you've carried about your mother. Write down one unspoken truth you've carried about your mother. And if it hurts and you're so scared to write it down, write it down. And after you write it down, burn it, rip it up, throw it away, shred it, delete it, but write it down. If there's more than one, do that. But just one, write down one unspoken truth you've carried about your mother, how you have experienced your mother. And I always tell my clients, don't judge what comes up, because what comes up really wants to come out. You will be surprised at the revelations you get about yourself and how you see the world when you really take the time to focus on this. Okay. Remember, you don't have to post this or share this with others. I just want you to honor it. Honor your feelings. Honor what's there, because you can't heal them or work through them or change anything until you really acknowledge what is there. All right? This is where you begin the this is like a raw place for you to begin to experience the breakthrough in your most important relationship, one of your most important relationships, your relationships with your mommy. So that's all I have for today. I thank you guys so much for being here. This is the Heartline with Adelai Brown. Remember to follow me on social media at Heart Coach Talk on Instagram and YouTube. Find me on TikTok at Heart Coach Talk 1. You can email me if you want to grow heart spaces together. If you want to work with me as a client, if you want me to come speak to your group or organization, email me at heartcoachtalk@gmail or info@addiebb.com. You can also go to my Linktree / the Heart Connections for tools to begin your healing journey or to further your journey along. And just remember, I want to stay connected with you. If you want to grow deeper, we are growing heart equity and we are growing a powerful community that is going to change the world. And I really want you to be a part of it. Remember, you're not crazy. You're just, you're not lazy. There's nothing wrong with you. You've just been carrying things that were never yours to carry. And it's time for you to lay them down. And I want to support you because we're going to lay down these burdens together. Because remember, when you heal your heart, you transform your life and you absolutely change the world. I love y'all. See you next time.